we have chosen a clinician and not a researcher, but someone who actually looks at patients and touches them every day in a clinical setting. And we've chosen a clinician who is triple board certified as primarily an ENT, an allergist, and a sleep doctor. And the reason why we chose this doctor is we feel it's important not to have myopic lens. If we're not looking at the whole picture, if we're not looking at the anatomical issues of our face, what we're exposed to in the air or in our body, and how that's affecting our sleep on a daily, weekly, annual basis, we don't have the full picture. So with that being said, I'd like to call up Dr. Shelley Burson, and I think Shelley's going to give us a overall overview of what she sees in her clinic every day. So you want to come up here?
Okay. Hi, and welcome everyone, and thank you all for coming today to be honest, to share your frustrations with a disease that is rampant and growing, and you guys are the lucky ones who have been diagnosed. And so the good news is that you're in good company, and the better news is that there is hope, because there are people in this room who are listening, and they're in charge of developing new drugs and devices and ways to help us live better with our disease. The unfortunate thing is that there are probably more people who are undiagnosed out there. And so our job is really to educate ourselves enough so we can find those other people for social responsibility reasons and just for everybody's better health. So if anybody in here is not diagnosed or wonders if you have the problem, I challenge you to just go to sleep for the next 10, 15 minutes and we'll know who you are at the end. So this is one of my favorite little owls. It says, "Every night I go to sleep, and every morning I realize it was a bad idea." Sleep is an unconscious phenomenon. It just happens to us. So we don't realize what's going on to us during sleep. And it's not really fair to even blame a bedmate, because sometimes the problems don't even come on for 90 minutes until somebody hits REM sleep. They may be fine. So unfortunately, there are a lot of people who look like this owl, and they come into doctors' offices and they say, "Doc, I don't know, something's wrong, but we got to work on this." Just a little disclaimer about me. So I am as Adam said, a solo practitioner, dying solo. It's not common anymore, but that gives me a unique position. I am not owned by an insurance company. I don't belong to a healthcare system. Disclaimer, I'm not pharma or device consulting, not yet anyway. And so I see it like it is. And in order to be alive as a solo practitioner, you have to offer services that are different and necessary, or things that people want. I do have a unique combination. I'm board certified in ENT and allergy and in sleep, which is not common. But it doesn't mean that those services cannot be found in other communities out in the world. And you just need to create your own team of providers who can help blend your form and function, which was day one in medical school. They taught us every person is built differently, and every person works differently. So the job of the doctor is to figure out your anatomy and how your body works and blend it so that you can optimize the health and wellness of the person. My goal for my patients is that middle sleeping owl. As you know, owls are nocturnal, but my goal is that we should be sleeping owls. This picture is unfortunately all too familiar. Sleep apnea is a social responsibility problem. It's happening to other people who are hurting us. Often it happens with at night, high speeds. They say young men. I don't know why they say that, but alcohol increases the effects, and there are performance lapses when people just ditz out for a few seconds. Became very personal to me when I think it was December 2013, I got the news that a friend of mine's brother, Jimmy Ferrara, was thrown from the Metro North train derailment to his death. And I think the speed that the train engineer was going was like 82, and he should have been doing 30, and just flew right off the tracks. And that happened close to home because I'm from Rockland County, and that happened right over in Westchester. So a little personal thing, and I had just at that time become board certified in sleep. And I said to my friend Barbara, I got to do something, and this is what my career is going to do. We're going to find these people. I didn't want to have a complicated slide about what is sleep. It's an unconscious phenomenon. The muscles are relaxed, and the body slows down and goes into different physiology. And just to look at the first two, light sleep, it's called stages 1 and 2. And then the good stuff, the restorative and all the better stuff, happens during stages 3 and 4. There's slow wave sleep, and my particular favorite stage is REM sleep. That's kind of all that you need to know at this moment. What is the function of sleep? So there are a lot of theories, and they keep increasing what we know about sleep. And primarily, it's thought to restore the body, to detoxify things that have happened during the day. There's this whole new theory that came out recently about how things in the brain dilate, and then there's this fluid that goes through and washes out all the toxins. That's all happening during good sleep. Body repairs itself, it consolidates memories, and my favorite is dreaming. And that's my son when he was a little guy. So what do we have here? But this is about sleep apnea, so we'll just spend a few seconds talking about what is an apnea. You guys all know already that apnea is breath holding. The definition of an apnea was kind of arbitrary, but it makes some sense because a normal breath lasts from 3 to 6 seconds. So if I can just ask all of you to just for a moment take a deep breath, and we're going to experience an apnea. Hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was an apnea. However, some people hold their breath for up to a minute. So, what does that do to people? Well, the way I explain it to my patients, it's very simple. If you're not breathing, the air's not coming in. So when the blood gets to your lungs, it's not picking up oxygen, but your blood is then pumping back out into your body, and it's purple instead of red. And over time, purple blood is going to cause the body parts to wear out. So they had to define these events in order to score a sleep test to figure out who's sick and who isn't. And to be a fly on the wall when they figured out those definitions must have been something else. Because it's arbitrary. And I always wanted to know if all of that matters is 10 seconds, but a normal breath is 3 to 6 seconds. What about something that's 9.5 seconds? And anybody who's a sleep technician, when I studied for my boards, I sat there and I read the montages, and I said, but what about all these things? They're almosts. Well, they don't count. Okay. So I think there are some people who are almost sick out there that just aren't even getting that data reported upon in their sleep tests. But anyway, so these are definitions. There's a thing called an apnea, has to do with your airflow. and that you're not breathing. It's a 90% drop from your normal breath. And then there are different definitions for hypopneas. If I had to sit for my boards again, I don't think I would pass because I think they changed the definitions again, but they keep changing them. There's a 30% drop in airflow and a 4% drop in oxygen. There's another definition with a 50% drop in airflow with a 3% oxygen drop. It's a whatever. And then there are these beautiful things that I love. They're called RERAs. They're respiratory effort-related arousals. So they're not enough to be hypopneas or apneas, but they cause your brain waves to wake up from whatever stage it's in. So they definitely disturb you. So I like it when we can count those because then you can find more patients. Obstructive sleep apnea, they have arbitrarily decided that anything less than 5 of these events per hour is normal. Then there's 5 to 15 is mild, 15 to 30 is moderate, and more than 30 events per hour is severe. As Adam shared, he won the award, badge of honor. What'd you say, 100 and, there you go. So, not really a badge of honor. He was very sick. Children, they're supposed to have perfect sleep, so anything more than 1. And they also, in children, look at carbon dioxide levels that build up. But no one's being tested on this slide, so let's move on. I'm a surgeon, and you guys don't see this scene, but when we're in an operating room with an anesthesiologist trying to get a sleep apneic patient to sleep, it's a real struggle. It's not a scene you want to be involved in. And the anesthesiologists are really happy when there's an ear, nose, and throat doctor in the room. Why? Because we know how to do the trach. We know how to bypass all of that upper airway stuff. But it's a challenge. The airways are narrow, they're collapsed, very often the chin is recessed, and when you give somebody medicine to put them off to sleep, all of the bad stuff with sleep apnea rears its ugly head right in front of you. So medication choices need to be different in sleep apneics, and there's a phenomenon that's called REM rebound, which means that after you've had anesthesia, sedatives, painkillers, a lot of those medicines take your body out of REM. Once all of that stuff has blown out of your body, and it's typically post-operative day 3, you are a sitting time bomb. Why? Because the body hates to lose REM, and it comes back with a vengeance, very often when somebody's home. And that's when we ENTs get the phone calls about post-op tonsil bleeding or increased pain, and it's been tied directly to this REM rebound. Unfortunately, it's also tied to heart attacks and strokes. So Francis Chung is an anesthesiologist who was very, very formative or important in the world of trying to figure out who might have sleep apnea. And she devised a great scale. It's called the stop bang. It's a mnemonic that has 3 subjective symptoms and 4 that are objective. And it's unlike the Epworth sleepiness scale that you guys all have done. And the problem we have found as clinicians is that you can't always trust that someone's going to tell you the truth about how tired they are, especially when they're asked, do you fall asleep at the wheel? So, and we can't trust that when we're taking a person to the OR. So this is brilliant. Any combination of 5 or more positives and then sending a patient for a sleep study, there's a very high chance that you're going to find sleep apnea. So there are 3 things that people cannot tell you the truth about, but we know you're lying. Do you snore? Are you tired? Has anybody ever said that you gasp for air? And when they tell you the truth, it just seals the deal. Hypertension, you got to ask in 3 ways. Do you have it? Are you on a pill that is used to treat hypertension, or did we measure it high today? And by the way, the definition of hypertension has changed. It's no longer 140 over 90. It's 135 over 85, and there's some talk about some people use 130 over 80. So we're looking at that. BMI stands for body mass index. It's how obese people are. And it says greater than 35 here. I actually use the cutoff at 30. because that's the first class of obesity. Age, we get a point for being over 50. Neck measurement, that's one of my favorite things. I have my medical staff, my medical assistant do this. We take out a tape measure and we measure a person's neck. Men who have a 17-inch neck has a higher chance of having sleep apnea, and women greater than 15. And it's a polite way, because it's already out, to see how thick somebody's neck might be. And men get an extra point, but I think that, plenty of women sitting here. A lot of women have sleep apnea. Anyway, and then I added this other, and then the apple shape of the body versus the pear shape. Apple shape is higher chances of having sleep apnea. I added this other mnemonic. I call it pizza. And this helps me as a clinician to get the CPT codes to allow the insurance companies to pay for the sleep tests that I want to do, especially in a skinny person who doesn't have obvious sleep apnea to their criterion. This helps me hit the criterion on behalf of the patients. P frequency, how often do you go to the bathroom? Almost every one of these has a diagnosis code. And it also, by the way, helps me educate the patient as I'm going through the list to tie together these symptoms that they may not have even known had something to do with sleep apnea. How frequently do you get up to P? Is pain keeping you awake? Parents, it's hereditary. Pills, are you taking pills to help yourself fall asleep? Pulse, that gets the whole AFib story there. There's a big tie between atrial fibrillation and sleep apnea. Eyes, glaucoma and cataracts. Indigestion, nocturnal GERD, reflux. Insulin, diabetes is tied to it. Insomnia, trouble falling and staying asleep. Irritable, there's the mood thing that we were talking about before. TMJ, a lot of people grind their teeth just to open their airway. Timing of work, we talked about that. The night shift worker, much higher chances of sleep apnea. Traveling to different time zones. Z, the need to take naps, bizarre dreams, kicking your legs, and then some of the newer things we were already mentioned, allergies, addictions like needing to have caffeine and sugar, car accidents, have you had them? And the apple shape that we just talked about. So yes, I tried to get a sleep study myself, and this is how beautiful we look. I wanted to be humbled, and I wanted to know what it felt like, and that goop in my hair was awful the next morning. That was terrible. And to be determined whether I was positive. All right, I'll tell you. I had mild sleep apnea myself. I had severe during REM, but I had an AHI of 6. So now you have it. I look at sleep as a symphony of the mind and the body. It's really cool. The body is doing a dance. It's all of its parts together and just coordinating. And when things don't all happen at the right time, that's when we're sick. And the brain is the leader of all of this. And by the way, that other slide, if I could just go back for a second. It's not letting me. There we go. That's Brahms' Lullaby, and I don't know if anybody's a musician here, but if you can see the bass line on the second from the bottom, Brahms was brilliant because the shape of that arpeggio on the lower, on the bass line, actually looks exactly like slow wave sleep. So, which is fascinating because babies go right into slow wave sleep with delta waves. So I thought that was really cool as a musician to pick up on that. So anyway, the brain is in charge of coordinating all of the body parts. The AHI, you guys have heard, you've heard of this number, and this was, the badge of honor, the average number of episodes that you have per hour of sleep. The RDI adds the RERAs, and not to bore you, but my point here is that not only do the number of episodes of apneas that people have matter, but when they occur matters. And my big thing is if they're happening concentrated during REM sleep specifically, the physiology is going nuts. The heart is pumping and the oxygen's dropping and the body is doing all this activity. It's very, very stressful. And if you have 30 events of apneas spread out over the night, your AHI could be 5. If you have 30 events happening in 5 hours, your AHI is 6. But if you have 30 events that are all happening during 1 hour of REM sleep, your AHI during that REM is 30. You're sick. So that matters. You're a time bomb. So REM, this is a picture of it. The top shows the eyeballs moving. It's a beautiful sine wave. You probably have held a baby who's sleeping and you see their eyes flickering. That's what it's like. And the brain waves are really active. It's indistinguishable from awake. But the third thing that we need to diagnose REM sleep is muscle atonia. The muscles just completely collapse. And obstructive, and I have a little hand model that I do with my patients to show them, and I guess I can do it here, but I show them that the nose, this is an airway, and this is one of your nostrils, and I show them why the form and the function matters more during REM. So if my first finger there's the airway, and it's going to get smaller. If I have a blocked nose, and then I have allergies with inflammation, and then I eat kind of bad food, and then I get into the muscle paralysis phase of sleep, boom, my airway is going to collapse. So there are things that can be done to fix anatomy and control inflammation and talk about nutrition so that when you get into REM, it should be fine. You should be able to hold your airway. So these are obstructive events. That's a break. That's an obstruction. And then after that, you can see all the activity that everything got jolted. And then if you take respiratory depressants like alcohol and pills and cigarettes, you can take minor events, respiratory depressed, take that 9.5-second event and make it count to 12. Steve writes, I love this joke, and when I woke up in the morning, my girlfriend asked me, "Did you sleep good?" I said, "No, I made a few mistakes." And the reason it's funny is because you're not in control of your sleep. You're not consciously able to make the mistakes. They happen. They just happen. The only mistakes you can make are around your sleep. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is that they play around with the circadian rhythm where they are not allowing themselves to be awake in the light and asleep in the dark. And animals do it, we all know, and we're turning that around. We're working at the wrong times, and we're messing up our our natural sleep cycles. So in conclusion this morning, and I will be back later to talk about treatments and stumbling blocks, it's important as a clinician and as a patient to know what's going on within your own body, your own anatomy, and what's going on around you, i.e., what is your sleep environment, how do you work, do you have allergies, what are you bombarding yourself with in addition to what anatomy was God-given. So with that, I will leave this back to Kim. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burst.